Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Talk number 559. A man asked Sri Bhagavan, Sri Bhagavan can know when I shall become a Jnani. Please tell me when it will be. Sri Bhagavan answered, If I am Bhagavan, then there is no one apart from me to whom Jnana should arise or to whom I should speak. If I am an ordinary man like others, then I'm as ignorant as the rest. Either way, your question cannot be answered. The question was that Sri Bhagavan can know when I shall become a Jnani. Please tell me when it will be. What is presumed in the question? That the man is an individual which is of a different nature than a Jnani, one who knows. What else is presumed? That knowledge, Jnana, is an event, some kind of occurrence. And that as an event it is determined by time, maybe predetermined. For the Jnani, though, for the sage, for Sri Bhagavan, there is no individuality of himself or of another. Indeed, the realization of the absence of individuality has everything to do with knowledge. What is Jnana? What is knowledge? Is it something not now existing that will arise later? Or is it of one's very nature and consequently ever existent? Only a Jnani can know another Jnani. This has been said in many places. What does it mean? Does it mean one individual knows the state of another individual? Or does it not mean that he knows the true nature, the only nature, the very self of the so-called other, and all otherness has been eliminated? There is no one apart from me to whom Jnana should arise, or to whom I should speak. So the question cannot be answered if it refers to a Jnani, one who has realized the self and is the self. If I am an ordinary man like others, then I'm as ignorant as the rest. The perspective of the individual is the obstruction to realizing what realization actually is. Either way, your question cannot be answered. because the individuality is not so. (560) When Sri Bhagavan was taking his bath, a few bhaktas were around him, speaking to themselves. Then they asked him about the use of ganja, hashish. Sri Bhagavan had finished his bath by that time. He said, "Oh, ganja. The users feel immensely happy when they are under its influence. How shall I describe their happiness? They simply shout, 'Ananda, Ananda.'" Saying so, he walked as if tipsy. The bhaktas laughed. He appeared as if he stumbled, placed his hands around A, and cried, "Ananda, Ananda." A records that his very being was transformed from that time. He had remained an inmate for the past 8 years. He further says that his mind now remains at peace. Where does bliss come from? How does ananda, bliss, shine? If it is something external, it will come and go. What is the source of bliss? Is it the ganja? Is it the touch of Sri Bhagavan's hands? What is bliss? Where does it come from? Or how does it shine forth? It does appear that bliss and that which seems to trigger it coincide. But what is the causality? Is it the senses? Is it a state of mind? It does seem to coincide with the happiness. But does it always? Discriminate in this way. The self is ever transcendent, completely so. It has no source. It is without cause. In that is ananda. Talk 561. A disciple asked, what is swarupa, form, and arupa, formless of the mind? Sri Bhagavan replied, when you wake up from sleep, a light appears. That is the light of the self, passing through Mahatattva. It is called cosmic consciousness. That is arupa, formless. The light falls on the ego and is reflected therefrom. Then the body and the world are seen. This mind is swarupa, with form. The objects appear in the light of this reflected consciousness. This light is called jyoti. What is referred to as light is knowledge. It has no shape or form. It has no color. It is not an object. That light is of the nature of consciousness and is ever present and omnipresent. But it is not known as such. The same light shines forth in deep sleep. And it shines forth after you wake up from sleep. The same light illumines everything, hence it is known as cosmic consciousness. When the light falls on or illumines the individuality or ego, then the body and the world are seen as if real. Discriminate between the form and its perceiver. The objects appear in the light of this reflected consciousness, and this light is called Jyoti. Discern what is of the body and the world and of the objects and the reflected light, etc. And the original formless light, which is just pure consciousness. And identify yourself as that. Such is knowledge. (562) October 21st, 1938. There is a statement in the book Vichara Sangraha that though a person realizes the self once, he cannot, for that simple reason alone, become a mukta, a liberated one. He continues to remain a victim of vasanas, latencies. Sri Bhagavan was asked whether the realization referred to was the same as the Jnanis, and if so, why there should be a difference in their effects. Sri Bhagavan explained, the experience is the same. Every person experiences the self, consciously or unconsciously. The ajnani's experience is clouded by his latencies, whereas the jnani's is not so. The jnani's experience of the self is therefore distinct and permanent. A practizer may be by long practice gain a glimpse of the reality. This experience may be vivid for the time being, and yet he will be distracted by the old vasanas, and so his experience will not avail him. Such a man must continue his manana and nididhyasana so that all the obstacles may be destroyed. He will then be able to remain permanently in the real state. The disciple asked, what is the difference between a man who makes no attempts and remains an ajnani, and another who gains a glimpse and returns to ajnana? Sri Bhagavan replied, in the latter case, a stimulus is always present to goad him on to further efforts until the realization is perfect. The disciple asks, the Shrutis say this knowledge of Brahman shines forth once and forever. Sri Bhagavan replied, they refer to the permanent realization and not to the glimpse. The disciple asked, how is it possible that a man forgets his very experience and falls back into ignorance? Sri Bhagavan illustrated it with the following story. There was a king who treated his subjects well. One of his ministers gained his confidence and misused the influence. All the other ministers and officers were adversely affected, and they hit upon a plan to get rid of him. They instructed the guards not to let the man enter the palace. The king noted his absence and inquired after him. He was informed that the man was taken ill and could not therefore come to the palace. The king deputed his physician to attend on the minister. False reports were conveyed to the king that the minister was sometimes improving and at other times collapsing. The king desired to see the patient, but the pundit said that such an action was against Dharma. Later, the minister was reported to have died. The king was very sorry when he heard the news. The arrogant minister was kept informed of all the happenings by spies of his own. He tried to foil the other ministers. He waited for the king to come out of the palace so that he might report himself to the king. On one occasion he climbed up a tree, hid himself among the branches, and awaited the king. The king came out that night in the palanquin, and the man in hiding jumped down in front of the palanquin and shouted his identity. The companion of the king was equally resourceful. He at once took out a handful of sacred ashes, vibhuti, from his pocket and scattered it in the air so the king was obliged to close his eyes. The companion shouted victory, Jai, to the king and ordered the band to play so that the other man's shout was drowned in the noise. He also ordered the palanquin bearers to move fast, and he himself sang incantations to keep off evil spirits. The king was thus left under the impression that the dead man's ghost was playing pranks with him. The disappointed man became desperate and retired into the forest for tapasya, austerities. After a long time, the king happened to go hunting. He came across the former minister seated in deep contemplation, but he hastened away from the spot lest the ghost should molest him. The moral of the story is that even though the man was seen in flesh and blood, yet the wrong notion that he was a ghost prevented right values being taken. So it is with a forced realization of the self. The question raised is about realization, and though a person realizes the self once, he cannot for that simple reason alone become a liberated one, a mukta. He continues to remain a victim of vasanas, tendencies. Sri Bhagavan was asked whether the realization referred to was the same as the Jnanis, and if so, why there should be a difference in their effects. Sri Bhagavan replied, "The experience is the same." In what way is the experience the same? He answers, every person experiences the self consciously or unconsciously. The self is ever there. When an experience it does not come, When overclouded by tendencies, it does not go. What you experience always is consciousness, is the self. Only the addition of misidentifications makes it appear as if varied. But there are not multiple kinds of self. There are not multiple kinds of realization. So what makes the difference? The Jnani, that is the ignorant one's experience, is clouded by his latencies, his tendencies. The Jnani's is not so. He has, by his wisdom, eliminated the very source of tendencies, and all the manifested tendencies have gone. A new self has not been brought in, but what the self truly is and ever is unobstructed. He is one with his knowledge, so he cannot lose it. Whereas the Jnani's experience is not so, is not obstructed by tendencies. The Jnani's experience of the self is therefore distinct and permanent. That it is clear without obscuration and different than anything in the samsara, and that it is permanent. One may, by long practice, gain a glimpse of the reality. This experience may be vivid for the time being, but it doesn't shine forth permanently. Why not? Because you will be distracted by the old vasanas. Hence the wise advise elimination of tendencies, elimination of the latent ignorance. And so his experience will not avail him. His experience does not result in permanent realization. Though it is permanent by nature, it will appear transitory. Though it is his own nature, it will appear as if removed from him. The distance determined by the kind of tendencies are there. What is to be done? Such a man must continue his manana, reflecting upon the truth after having been instructed in it. Such a man must continue his manana, reflection, and nididhyasana, continuous profound meditation. What will be the result of that? All the obstacles may be destroyed. What are the obstacles? Just ignorance in the form of misidentification, manifesting as the tendencies that have now been addressed. He will then be he will then be able to remain permanently in the real state. He himself has become that state, and no separation exists. The next question was, what is the difference between a man who makes no attempts and remains an ignorant one, and another who gains a glimpse and returns to ignorance? Sri Bhagavan answered, in the latter case, that is, one has a glimpse of reality and yet returns to ignorance, a stimulus is always present to goad him on to further efforts until the realization is perfect. The bliss of the experience, the ananda, draws him on. The freedom and the clarity draws him on. Having experienced it once, he yearns to experience the reality always. Stimulus may be provided in many other ways as well, all of which will prompt him in one way or another to continue practicing, to continue his inquiry until the realization is perfect. The other alternative, a man who makes no attempts, Sri Bhagavan does not even comment upon. The next question was the Shrutis, that is to say the Vedas. This knowledge of Brahman shines forth once and forever. This is what is declared. Sri Bhagavan replied, they refer to the permanent realization and not to the glimpse. The next question was, how is it possible that a man forgets his very experience and falls back into ignorance? The story was narrated as an analogy. He himself declared what the moral of the story was, is that even though the man was seen in flesh and blood, yet the wrong notion that he was a ghost prevented right values being taken. So it is with a forced realization of the self. You must, in your practice, to realize the truth in a way that's perfect and full. Eliminate the misidentifications. within the context of the misidentification, within the context of a wrong concept, the truth will seem out of grasp. Within the context of misidentification, all the other concepts will manifest. In the story, the king was so much believing in the basic report about the minister that no matter what happened, there would be something that would make him go under the wrong impression again and again and again. If he didn't have that preconceived idea, any of the ways that occurred would have been sufficient for him to see beyond the ghost. Without the misidentification as an ego, as a body, etc. Any of the various ways the truth is declared will be clear to one. If one retains the misidentification and does not inquire into them, any amount of description will never seem to last. So you must inquire. You must inquire into the nature and the stand of the inquirer. What are you taking yourself to be? What are you assuming to be real? Question like that until there are no more false assumptions. October 22nd, 1938, 563. A group of people came on a visit to Sri Bhagavan. One of them asked, "How can I keep my mind aright?" Sri Bhagavan responded, "A refractory bull is lured to the stall by means of grass. Similarly, the mind must be lured by good thoughts." The disciple said, "But it does not remain steady." Sri Bhagavan replied, "The bull is accustomed to stray, takes delight in going astray. However, he must be lured with luscious grass to the stall. Even so, he will continue to trespass into the neighbor's fields. He must gradually be made to realize that the same kind of good grass can be had in his own place. After a time, he will remain in the stall without straying. Later a time will come when, even if driven out of the stall, he will return to the stall without going into the neighboring fields. So also the mind must be trained to take to right ways. It will gradually grow accustomed to good ways, and it will not return to wrong ways." The disciple said, "What are the good ways to be shown to the mind?" the Maharshi said, thought of God. What are the good thoughts? The bull is lured to the stall by means of grass. What is happiness? What is fulfilling? The mind must be lured by good thoughts. The mind should not be sullied by the thoughts of ignorance. He must be lured with luscious grass to the stall. Happiness pulls you inward. Even still, the mind will continue to wander into erroneous notions. He must gradually be made to realize that the same kind of good grass can be had in his own place. The happiness after which the mind runs can also be found within, and to much greater extent. After a time, he'll remain in the stall without straying. After a while, with the mind turned inward, it just will no longer go outward. It will not believe in its own ignorance anymore. Later a time will come when, even if driven out of the stall, he'll return to the stall without going into the neighboring fields. It is indicative of the full detachment gained by realizing the real source and nature of happiness. So also the mind must be trained to take to right ways. It will gradually grow accustomed to good ways and will not return to wrong ways. Those which conduce to wisdom and happiness are the right ways. Those that just further ignorance, give rise to delusion, etc., those are the wrong ways. The final question was, what are the good ways to be shown to the mind? Sri Bhagavan answered tersely, thought of God. That is something you can never do too much with. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.